This is Africa's voice in Italian football.
Welcome to the 5th episode of Calcio Mzansi. I'm your host, Antonio Cristati, and I'm joined by two new friends today. The others are currently on study leave and on strike. So Jordan Ramos and Thomas Gudelius.
You said the same thing 3
However
times.
you pronounce your amazing surname. Right. Thomas Muller also works, but today he's half Italian. So Tommaso, welcome.
Thomas the
Welcome
Tank,
aboard.
maybe. Thomas the Tank.
Thomas the Tank. Angelo and Matt are all busy writing exams currently, so they are out of it till about Wednesday. And we're just going to start off this podcast with some of the fixtures that happened last week, referring to Torino's loss to Parma, which was a bit of a shock in my opinion, knowing that they are up and coming against Lazio, which is quite an interesting match. Both teams are in the bottom half of the Serie A table, while at the same time, both teams have a similar kind of owner who does not want to spend money, who does not want to invest in other players, who can't seem to get the books right on their ends, who both have fan bases that don't want their presidents around and would prefer for the presidents themselves to sell the club and rather give it to someone else or another group of investors who want to invest in the club and take them to another level of football. I just came across a recent reading or a recent article that I had read that Torino's aspirations for this year were to actually qualify for Europe. Hence why they tried to get Marco Baroni, who finished just outside of the European spots last year with Lazio and the half of the squad that he had. But things don't seem to be going his way at the moment right now for Torino. And, getting a little bit of comment here, Jordan, how do you think that this appointment was supposed to go for Baroni? I mean, he's really sitting at the bottom of the table, struggling to beat Parma, having lost the last game 2-1, and it was a terrible display of football.
So I think, early days, season still fresh, 5 games in. Usually in football, at this level of football, you can kind of see the way that things are going to go forward. I think bringing in Baroni was, taking over a coach that was 7th. I think the team of Torino with their history, they've always been somewhat competing. They've always been going for Europe. Like you say, the ownership is a bit stingy, but going for a 7th place coach compared to possibly going for a Champions League level coach, I think that was poor from their side. And I think it's, you're reaping your rewards per se with getting Baroni in and you seeing what's going to happen. Baroni had a decent side when he was at Lazio, taking over Torino, different team, different personalities. You get to see what actual type of coach he is. And then going up against the Parma, who aren't fantastic. They're not the best team. And losing quite convincingly, even though the score was 2-1, you lose 3 points, and it's against a team that, in my books, you should be, that should be 6 points every day at the end of the season, home and away. I don't want to say it's a horrible selection to bring Baroni in and his football is rubbish or his football has gone out the door and his tactics are all over the place, because it is early days. But then at the same time, early days, you want to be taking those 3 points against a team that you expected to. Maybe if you play Inter or if you play Milan, if you play Juventus, different story. But Parma, I don't know, you should be winning.
I think a team like Parma, where in the previous episodes we've discussed so in depth, I'm one guy that doesn't think Parma will get relegated, because Parma is a very historical team, and the history they bring to the league. It's bad for Serie A to have Parma relegated, and I think they'll stay. But I don't think anyone expected that, where you've got Parma beating Torino, and Torino, like I said, is normally always finishing in the upper half of the Serie A table, just above 10th or whatever. Not always competing for Europe, but sometimes maybe even pushing for, 5th place and so forth. So something that I'm going to ask another question on, because Sarri, we know, is a seasoned coach. And we're moving to the other spectrum of Lazio. We saw Sarri at Chelsea, and we've seen Sarri at Juve and Sarri at Lazio before his current Lazio stint. What is it about Sarri this time around that's not working? Sarri ball at Lazio worked. Sarri ball at Chelsea worked. He won Europa League. Sarri ball at Lazio saw him competing for titles. Sarri ball at Napoli was actually one of the most incredible forms of football to watch at Napoli. And now he's come back to Lazio. I know that Lazio has got one of the worst transfer bans I think I've ever seen in my life. Not buying a single player, selling players on top of it with your transfer ban, and then on top of it, not willing to promote other people from the youth system. What is it about Sarri this season that is just not working for Lazio? Lazio has lost to Como 2-0. They beat Verona 4-0, lost to Sassuolo, they just got promoted from Serie B, lost to Roma, obviously with the UFC boxing match that we had with Guendouzi on the field as well, because he just seems to love a fight. Then beating Genova 3-0, and now they're coming up against Torino, which I would say these teams are on the same level. Okay, yes, one's got a transfer ban, but they're both in the same situation, same diving pool. Is this ever going to come right for Sarri in his second stint, the same way that it worked for Lazio in his first stint? Tom, you got to give a bit of insight here, bro. This guy was tops wherever he's gone. He's won one Scudetto, he won Europa League with Chelsea. Is this going to work for him at Lazio this season?
I mean, just like Jordan said, is this Matchday 6? You know, there was a few tough games in the beginning. Obviously, we know Como is doing quite well, so that's a 2-0 loss. Sassuolo just got promoted. They have a certain amount of confidence. Then they got a good win against Verona. But it is early days. Hopefully the 3-0 win against Genoa gave them a little bit of a confidence boost. I know against Roma they also had a red card sometime in the game. But it is early days. I think, you know, they should give it a few more matches, find themselves. But yeah, in this match, it's very hard to see what's going to happen. I think whatever team is more clinical or whatever team wants it more is the team that's going to win.
Something that, you know, I don't really know how this is going to work for Lazio now, knowing that you've got a random situation for Lazio. Lazio likes to play out wide, down the middle. Torino, on the other hand, is really reverting back to rubbish football, in my opinion, but it's also good football, and that is Catenaccio, just sitting back, taking in all the pressure, and then obviously being good on counter-attacks. But Torino is not exactly getting their system correct. Do you think that Torino can somehow upset Lazio? Is this going to become a routine of, you know, you lose one, you win one, you lose one, you win one, you lose one, you win one? Is that going to be the case here for this game?
Going on Torino's side, Baroni he's a pragmatica. He's somebody, he likes to be solid. You know, typical Italian football. I want to be solid at the back. I want to concede the least amount of goals as possible. I want to have a solid structure, a base to build off of, and then to go forward and to potentially create chances. And with Baroni, I don't think with this Torino team he has the risk factor to his game right now. I think he's trying too hard to kind of rebuild instead of adapting to what he has in front of him right now, but still somewhat decent. And then you come to Torino and you concede 10 goals in 5 games. I mean, you're averaging 2 goals conceded a game. I think for Torino, they're in panic stations right now because your coach's identity is now under scrutiny. The team is sitting low in the league and literally scraping by fighting for a point. I mean, Torino has won 1 game. They've lost 3, drawn 1. I mean, that's a relegation start to the season. I know they're not sitting there right now. So going forward, I think Baroni needs to adapt instead of rebuild. I think he needs to adapt what he has, make his team a lot more solid, shore up the defense. And then I agree with you. I think it's going to be get a point here, scrape a 3-pointer there, take a loss on the chin, move on to next week type of thing. The big thing with Sarri is he needs the right personnel in the right positions or else his style of football doesn't work. I know when he started at Chelsea that season, he was moving everyone around. Marcos Alonso was a centre-back, then a left-wing back. Loftus-Cheek went from academy player to a starter. Alvaro Morata got benched. He was moving everything around. I mean, even Eden Hazard at some point at the start of the season, he was benched for 3 games in a row. I applaud Sarri. You know, he will bench his star player, you know, for the sake of the team to find the perfect structure, to find his perfect format. But with the transfer ban, I think for Sarri ball to work, he'll either need the backing from the ownership to wait and to be able to bring in players that he needs, or he'll have to somehow trust his youth, which he's not a big fan of, to fill the gaps. or it's going to be a case where Sarri ball fails and Lazio has a new coach at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, end of the season is really like, I don't even know if they'll wait till end of the season. At this point, I'm also of the opinion that I don't know if Sarri's going to stay. He's come out after the game against Roma. He said that this is by far the hardest thing he's had to do. He took a job, and 3 days after taking the job, Lazio's got this massive transfer ban and they can't sign players. At this point, I may be wrong, but I think Lazio's more worried about keeping Sarri than what Sarri is about keeping Lazio.
Yeah.
Because we all know what Sarri can do. The titles speak for themselves, besides a cigarette butt that's continuously inside of his mouth. But he's a good coach, and I just don't think he's going to remain at Lazio. I think I give him another 2 games. I think that if it continues like this, we've mentioned it again, we could see Lazio in a relegation starting already before December, which is a crazy stat to even think about. And Sarri is not the kind of coach who needs to be sitting in a relegation battle. That's not for him. Another team that I want to move on to, and it's a team that, in the beginning I wasn't too convinced. I thought maybe Chivu would lose his job. Thiago Motta would somehow or some way come into place and replace him. I thought that the win against Ajax in the Champions League was not a very convincing win. But after playing against Ajax and winning 2-0, they then played a game against Sassuolo and they won the game, and it was a much better game. They were a lot more creative. I felt that Inter, and that's who we are obviously speaking about, I felt that Inter's team in the past couple of games have shown zero creativity. I've not been scared to express that at all, and I know that Matt has also expressed it on previous podcasts as well. But Inter's midfield is something or somewhat a shadow of what it was. We all know that Inter under Inzaghi played a very complicated form of football where you would see your defenders sometimes as your centre forwards and your centre forwards sometimes all the way in the back line because of how dynamic their system was. Chivu's obviously come in and he's having to try and adapt his ideas and implement them into this team, but in some way also know that there's an identity to this team and it's a really well-worked oil machine in Inter, but he's struggling to get his ways and things into this team and around. Until the game against Sassuolo, which I saw a bit of a different dynamic in the second half to Inter against Sassuolo. I felt that now we are starting to see a bit more solidness at the back with Inter's defense. They obviously went on to beat Cagliari 2-0, a team that, yes, we know Cagliari does not press. They will sit with 11 men in the box for 90 minutes and also, again, play scrappy football, catenaccio, and just, the catenaccio can be beautiful, but there's teams that can do it well, and there's teams that do it terribly, and they make the football look bad. And Cagliari just doesn't play great football. We saw in that game there, Esposito score a goal, which was very nice, very happy for him. And then they obviously went on in the week to then play against Slavia Praha, which they won 3-0 in the Champions League. A very convincing win. I was hoping to see a lot more rotation in the team from Chivu, and I didn't really get that from him. He still starts with Lautaro and Thuram when he knows that he has players like Baroni and Esposito sitting on the bench, 2 youngsters that are waiting to play. I don't know really how to feel about it. I feel that maybe he could be doing something wrong. This is where I'm going to have to ask you guys, is he making a mistake by not allowing for rotation within the squad?
I mean, if you look at the last few games, especially the last game they played against Slavia Prague.
Yeah.
You do see people like Lautaro, Martinez, and Thuram, they make the difference, right? Lautaro got 2 goals there, Thuram 2 assists, and they do make the difference, but you definitely need rotation in the squad if you want to be back up there. There was a reason that they got to the Champions League final last season. I know they messed it up after that in the final, but there's a reason they got there. They do have class players, and if they do what they did last season, I think they're going to do well. But yeah, you do need rotation, and but I'm not sure what I would do for Thuram, Martinez. Because Thuram right now is shining, and to put someone like Lautaro Martinez on the bench, it's a difficult choice.
No, I think you're spot on. Look, I think my biggest question, this Cremonese team, look, by all means, they're not great. You've got, a very big bodybuilder in the back in Bashkirotto, which is, he hits that Arnold flex every time he scores, which is quite cool. I'd love to see him go to a bigger team and then get the hype that he does deserve. But do you think that Cremonese, yes, they got Jamie Vardy now up front, and it's a bit of like a fantasy and so forth. The only question I have is they beat Milan in the first game of the season because of the disorganization and Allegri trying to implement his ideas into Milan itself. Do you think that they can somehow frustrate Inter and nick a point like they did to Milan earlier this season?
I don't think if it's a matter of somehow. I think it's a certainty that they're going to be frustrating Inter to a point where they take a point or three. I have no idea. I mean, I think you alluded it a bit earlier when you were speaking about Inter, is that under Inzaghi, you had a machine. You had a beautiful team that played amazing football. Everyone was in the perfect position. Everything was flowing. You had people that could come off the bench and just seamlessly flow into the pace of the game. And Inter were a dangerous team. Yeah, they didn't win the league, but they were up there. And then to go to the Champions League final in the way that they did, I mean, yes, in the semi-final, they probably put a little bit too much into it and killed themselves before they play the final. But to beat that Barcelona from last season and to in that fashion that they did, to fight to the end. Inter Milan now is more of, I think, they're just another team in Serie A. They're going to be competing for Champions League, but like from as a Milan fan, I'm not as scared of them anymore as what I used to be maybe a season or 2 seasons ago. The coach is a pragmatic in terms of his rotation and who he wants to play, because you're going up against a Cremonese team who are going to frustrate you. They're going to hold the ball as long as they can. They're going to milk every single foul that they can. They're going to sit deep. They're going to keep the field narrow. They're going to put their big boys onto Rum. They're going to limit Lautaro's time on the ball, and Inter are going to find it very, very hard to break them down. I think they can, but again, we got Champions League next week again. You need to rotate your squad. You can't play Lautaro and Thuram at the top all the time. There's a point where one of them's going to get injured or sick, or they're just going to drop out of form because of fatigue. I mean, you can play Lautaro with Boni. He's more of a big boy, physical. Play Esposito with Thuram. Play Fratesi. You don't have to play with two strikers all the time. You can slot Fratesi in. He showed last season that he can. He can go play as maybe a high 10, a false 9. So I think it's going to be an interesting game. I don't think it's a whether. I don't know if it's going to happen. I think definitely Inter Milan's going to get rattled this weekend.
Yeah, it will be an interesting one. Tom, I'm going to ask you this question, and it's pretty simple. Inter's games that are up and coming. Yes, they got Champions League up and coming again, but with the European fixtures looming, should Chivu rotate this team? I'm just going to give stats here. They played against Slavia Praha with Francesco Acerbi in the back, who got an 8-star rating out of 10. Very good, but he's 37. You've got Emmanuel Akanji sitting on the bench and not playing because Francesco Acerbi is starting ahead of him. Now, don't get me wrong, Acerbi is a good centre-back. He's not great. He's not Chiellini, but he's good. And he did well against Haaland. Haaland struggled against him every match that Inter has played against City, and other major strikers have struggled against Acerbi. But is it the right choice to play a 37-year-old who is really quite slow? You could give him a 24 speed on FIFA if you wanted to. Akanji, is the logic for me making sense to start Acerbi over Akanji?
I mean, I believe in certain games you have to just pick who will be the better player for that specific game. But Inter has got a lot of games upcoming. If it's Champions League, Serie A, but you have to rotate. For me, it will be hard to rotate the front two, like Latura and Thuram, but you have to rotate the whole squad. I mean, what happens if you're playing with the same squad every single game and then someone gets injured or something happens, a red card? Then you bring on someone who hasn't had any real play time or that confidence. You do have to make a plan. There's people on the bench for a reason. I think the game between Inter and Cremonese as well, I do see Jordan's point. I can see Cremonese pulling off something here. Juve and Atalanta have no losses with Cremonese. They're the only teams in Serie A with no losses. So
that's crazy to think of.
I can also see an upset happening there.
Well, Tony, let me ask you this. Let's take the players out of it. Is the manager good enough? Is his tactics good enough?
You know what, dude? He is. You remember we were having that discussion earlier about Sarri's not a relegation manager. He shouldn't be playing in those spots. Davide Nicola is, and I'll tell you this now, like a tax avoidance specialist. He is a relegation avoidance specialist. This guy, if you don't want your team to get relegated, you don't have him in your team. And then what you do is the last 10 games, you hire Davide Nicola and you say, please, please come manage my team so that I don't get relegated. And it works. I promise you could put him in any league, Prem, Bundesliga, it doesn't matter. That oak is one guy that will make sure your team will not get relegated. He's that good. But is he the right coach? No, I don't like his football. I think it's terrible football. Like terrible football. I don't think he plays great football. I think that signing Jamie Vardy for me is a bit of a, I don't know what you're trying to do. More shirt sales? I mean, that's possible. You're not going to go win the Serie A. That's not going to happen. Yes, they haven't lost any games, which is good. But it's because the one thing Davide Nicola knows how to do is defend. You look at goals conceded versus goals against, like they've done well. They have a very good goal in, goal out ratio. They're sitting at a +2, which is that's decent. I mean, that's what you want in a team. It gets your points. It gets you somewhere. 9 points in the bag. I think here's a good question to ask both of you. Your first 6 games of the season, don't they count just as much as the last 6 games of the season?
I mean, every point counts, but usually, like I would say, the first maybe like 5 to 8 games of a season, that's when you'll actually start to see the identity of a team. Because, I mean, the transfer window recently closed, so there's no what ifs. There's no people that are worried about their future. There's no people worried about if they're going to get dropped, if somebody else is going to take their place. And this is around the time where people start getting injured or starting 11s actually get cemented from their coaches. This is the team that I'm going to play week in, week out. So the points matter. Listen, you want to win everything. You need those points. But I would say in the beginning, it's touch and go. But if by game week 7, game week 8, the same story is going and the same narrative is being played out by each one of these teams by the same coaches, then you can start saying who's going to be the next manager, who's going to be replacing this person, or should this player be ahead of this next player? I mean, like should a Cherby be playing over a Kanji? Or should a Cherby actually be looking at retirement? Should he be slowly being reamed out of the squad to, let's say, halfway through the season, he's not even getting a starting role in majority of the games, and you've got a younger, quicker, more agile Akanji taking his spot, and a Cherby maybe moves on at the end of the season or retires. These decisions, I would say that you can really judge them by game week 7 or 8. I think it is a bit early now, but I mean, maybe in the next week or 2 is when it's deadline day, it's judgment time. So until I see some changes or I see some difference in tactics, and I think Inter Milan are going to struggle, and I think Cremonese, they're not going to play to win, they're going to play not to lose.
I want to move on to the next topic, and it's something that we generally have a very positive attitude towards Como, but something that has kind of been ticking me off about Como, and I want your opinions on this. Como has a lot of youngsters, and we know that a lot of them are not Italian, okay? A lot of them are Spanish. It's like he does the shopping in other leagues and so forth. Something about Como that is making me a bit angry with them is the way they uphold themselves. And I have never seen this before, but Como is now on 2 red cards in Serie A. And if you look at both of these red cards that they received in Serie A, it comes down to anger management of these players. We've seen an elbow in the last game. I mean, why? Why are you throwing an elbow? You don't even have the ball. Yes, the guy's irritating you. He's roughening you up. He's busy talking, cucking your ear. This is football. When you trash talk another player, it happens in every sport. But the players lash out. And it's something that is frustrating me because from a discipline perspective, I have an issue with this. The same thing happened in a preseason match. I don't know if you guys remember the preseason match between Real Betis and Como. After the match, there was an altercation with Pablo Forals, who landed up being sent off after having a fight with Hector Bellerin. And it was a proper bloody fist fight in the field. This isn't a normal football thing to happen. You don't play football to get into a boxing match on the field. And so we saw the same thing where the game against Genova, there was a red card. The game against Cremonese, there was also a red card. And what made me upset is that the red card was for a player that I actually really like and think is a very talented player, which is Jesus Rodriguez. Roma is doing very well in Serie A. As we know, they've beaten Lazio. They are currently sitting eighth. Yes, they've lost the game, but they are playing fantastic football. We've seen the Nico Paz hype go through the roof. We've seen Jaden Adai score some incredible goals for Como. And now that amazing footballing style that is now in Serie A and doing well under Fabregas is coming up against the team of Atalanta, who we all watched the game against Club Brugge. Mario Pasalic with the game winner there in the Champions League was just a
player.
beast. It was something. Yeah, it was lovely to see. You know, they're coming up against an Atalanta that is slowly taking form, which I think is something nice to see finally. I'm not too much of a fan of Juric. Like I said, I actually can't believe that Juric has become the coach of Atalanta. He did nothing at Southampton. He got the team pretty much relegated, got sacked. Did the same thing at Roma. Terrible job, got fired. And, you know, there's sort of an identity coming, but I'm just kind of in two minds about this because Juric has won his last couple of games against Torino, drew his game against Juve, but, you know, are those teams misfiring? Or is Juric's team finally starting to click? Is it that this Atalanta team is starting to do well? We obviously know there's that young boy that everyone on this side of the channel is going crazy about because he's a massive talent, especially for Africa, is Kamaldeen Sulemana. What a player, outstanding player for Atalanta. And a very possible replacement in my eyes for Ademola Lookman. If Atalanta is looking to ship him off for a couple of million, send him. You've got a decent replacement in place to take over for him. My question is, you know, are we being a bit too nice with Como and their ambition to be a top team with this kind of attitude going forward in the Serie A? Are they acting incorrectly to make it to Europe? I mean, you cannot get red cards every second game because your player's upset, your teammate is trash talking you, or the opposition is trash talking you. You know, these things are things obviously of young players, but can this, you know, actually stop them from making Europe?
I mean, on the one hand, you obviously don't want it to turn into like a UFC, like whole boxing event, right? But if you're sitting there as a Como manager, right, would you rather see your team with the same ambition as like a Torino at the moment, or would you want to see a team that's playing a little bit more dirty, like Como is at the moment? They're showing so much heart, and I think that's the reason they're sitting in 8th place right now. So, you know, on the one hand, it's not nice to watch when they're playing dirty like that, but as a manager, I think he doesn't have a problem with that, and that's why you can see the results at the moment, and that's also one of the reasons I think Como is going to give Atalanta a very hard time, because they both had a few good last matches, and it's going to be a tough match, I think, for both teams.
Atalanta's been doing somewhat decently, and obviously that game against Bruges, I think maybe it could be something that gives you the motivation to do better in the league. You know, George, he has a question that I'll ask because I completely wrote them off in the season. And that is, after the win against Bruges and you saw that heart come out of this team and they really tried, do you think that Atalanta, after this win, could be consistent enough to push again and make sure that they make it to Champions League next season?
Atalanta and consistency, they're always in a conversation together. When you're looking at Serie A, you're going to look at which team that's going to pull out the result when they need to. They're going to defend when they need to. They're going to win when they need to. They're going to score, and they tick boxes. I think under Juric, it is going to be a bit more challenging. Just looking at his past, looking at his resume, I don't rate him as a coach into the Premier League, and then you get relegated straight away. I don't think that's something to be proud of. That's not good. And then you come to an Atalanta who are a Champions League team, who should be competing for your top 5 places, and you make them look a bit shaky. Yes, I think the reason why they are starting to do a bit better now is they're getting used to the coach, and I think actual individual performances are the reason why they can grind these results out. It's you actually have some quality players. Like you have Lookman is a beast. You've got Pasalic, who you can always count on to just be a dog. That guy just works. He runs and he's going to be in the right position at the right time. You got a solid defense. You got a solid midfield. You know, nothing too extravagant. You know, Edison and Darun in midfield are solid players. with the timing of the season, maybe this will spark something, but also it might just give false confidence and they lose their next game because you're coming up against a Como who are confident, they're young, they're energetic, they're in your face. Like Tom said, it's not nice to see when people are fighting and they're getting aggressive and they're in your face. But as a player, I would rather have somebody next to me who's going to die for me, who will have my back, who's in other people's faces, who's energetic, who's a ride or die, compared to someone who's actually just, schlep, or I don't want to be here, or, I pick my paycheck up at the end of the week and then screw the rest of you type thing. So I think Como, if they can keep this up and keep the energy, they are going to be a dark horse in the league. And Atalanta, they do need to ride this high of the Champions League, but I think they really need to be careful because the coach's system is still a bit suspect with the way he's been playing.
What would be a reasonable scoreline for you in this match?
2-1 Como.
1-1. I don't know, guys. I think Atalanta's going to win. I think that Atalanta will win the game 2-1 on my side. I totally hear where Jordan's coming from, and I really like that perspective. Not that I've ever really thought of it, but these guys here that are playing at Como are nobodies. They're a bunch of youngsters who are trying to make it to go somewhere. And I still believe that, yes, they are young and talented, but the inexperience can cost them. I know that they've got outstanding players who, yes, are experienced and can help the team, but in this sense, I am expecting certain players to, step up and help the youngsters not make these stupid mistakes, like an elbow to the face of another player in a match against a team like Cremonese, where those 3 points are so important and you don't want to throw it away. Like, why on earth would you want to do that?
Well, Como's going to have a speed bump in the middle of the season because there's a spanner in the works. Is Nico Paz is probably not going to be a Como player for the rest of the season. He's got Real Madrid and Chelsea offering contracts to him already. So the likelihood of him moving in January is probably quite high. And can he be replaced? Is Fabregas a good enough coach to slot someone in to take over the role because he is their star player? Or is Como going to ride this high till middle of the season and dip?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a valid question. I mean, most of us look at the league as here and now, but it's such a valid point. You're running a club, you need to have a replacement for that person should the person leave in January. What you're saying is spot on. Real Madrid can recall him back from his loan. They might say to him no, and Como might just say, we'll sell him to Chelsea or wherever the hell the options come in. I know that a player like Nico Paz doesn't need to look very far because of how talented he is and what he's done in Serie A in literally under 2 years. So very impressed with him.
Do you know what his release clause is? Have a guess.
I know that to go back to Madrid, all they have to do is pay like 10 million euros or something like that.
Yeah, his release clause to go anywhere is 10 million. Literally, like anyone can come up and say, listen, I think it's going to be the battle of who can convince him because everybody's got 10 mil. I mean, flipping Derby County can whip up 10 mil and go for the guy. So, I think it's going to be a matter of who can convince him, who's got the style of football that he's going to enjoy. Because 10 mil's nothing for that type of player. 10 mil's peanuts.
I don't think you'd be convinced by Derby County, bro. I mean, that's...
Maybe you got to Wrexham, bro.
Maybe, nah.
Maybe Wrexham's calling him. Hollywood is calling him.
Maybe. That's not a bad idea. I want to move on to another team that I think if you are a Roma fan this weekend, I'm sorry. And you need to go to church and you need to pray and you need to ask for some sort of help. I mean, help as well. But I've never watched a football match where you have 3 penalties in a Europa League match. 3 penalties. And all 3 penalties, the goalkeeper saves. All 3. If you're a Roma fan, please, yes, you need to go to church and you need to pray and, hope that things go better for you because for those who don't know, Roma played Lille at home in the Stadio Olimpico this week, and things did not go well for them. They had 3 penalties, and all 3 penalties were saved by Lille. I mean, Dovbyk took the first penalty, and it was probably the worst pen I've ever seen in my life. He then took another penalty, and then that became the worst penalty I've ever seen in my life. And then they decided, all right, we got another penalty. We're not going to let Dovbyk take it. We're going to let Matthias Soler take it. And then Matias Soler took the penalty, and it was the worst penalty I've ever seen in my life. You could have won the game 3-1. Let's just put it like Lille was very unconvincing. And I felt that this Roma team really threw away such an important amount of points. Those 3 points in this match matter so much. But then at the same time, I'm also looking at it going, Roma has a big match this weekend. They're playing Fiorentina. Fiorentina are winless in the whole of Serie A. They just won in the Conference League 2-0 against Sigma last night. But again, coming up against this Fiorentina who can't win in Serie A. They cannot win in Serie A, and they are bound to prove a point that they need to win. What's going through your mind? Sacrifice 3 points in the Europa League to ensure you beat Fiorentina, because that Serie A is a very long game and it's a league of who makes the least amounts of mistakes, and sacrifice the points in Europa League? Or is it, we actually made a mistake in what we did in the game against Lille in the Europa League, and Fiorentina wasn't even on our minds? How do you bounce back from it?
I don't know. I think it would have been on their minds, because even though they're sitting at the bottom of bottom 17th, even though they are there, playing in Florence is tough. Going to Fiorentina is always going to be tough. You're playing in a fortress. They're going to make the game very hard. So I think to a point they had Fiorentina in the back of their minds. But then I also think they did accommodate that. Benching Ferguson, changing the midfield up, changing the defense. I think Roma accommodated the Fiorentina aspect. They made the rotations needed, and they just had a shocker. I mean, playing at home against, Roma fans are crazy. There's like some men. You got an exciting bunch of fans who are expecting a high level of football. You get 3 penalties and you choke on every single one. I think it was just a bad day at the office, and luck was not on their side for sure.
I don't know if you call it a bad day at the office.
They didn't rock up to the office.
Yeah, I still am not too convinced by this Roma team. They are doing well. They're actually sitting at the top of Serie A, for those who are wondering. Roma is sitting at the top of Serie A, but I feel that their wins are not convincing wins. They are playing an ex-Scudetto winner in Pioli's Fiorentina this week. Pioli won the Serie A with Milan in a wonder season. It's something that I never thought would actually happen, but it did. My question becomes this. Pioli's football, again, hasn't changed. Even the game against Sigma, it was very simple. Run the ball down the lines, cross it in, and hope that someone's going to get on the end of it. Their football rarely ever changes. And Gasperini, on the other hand, is an Italian master tactician. He plays some freaking amazing football. And for those who don't know, Gasperini is the manager who has given teams like Barcelona a run in the Champions League, and Atalanta who shocked the world and smashed Liverpool at home. My question behind all of it becomes a very simple thing of, do you think Pioli can get a win against this Roma team and actually get the ball rolling in Serie A? They are winless. How can a team like Fiorentina be winless? Because, can he get the ball rolling? My biggest question behind all of it becomes one thing. If he doesn't win against Roma this weekend, do we see his resignation on Monday morning?
I see an upset happening here as well. I see Fiorentina beating Roma, because Fiorentina had a tough start to the season, right? But if you're looking at Roma's last few games, like you said already, Anton, it was very, very tight wins. And if you also look at the opponents, they didn't face like any Napoli's, Juventus. The last 4 games they faced Verona, Lazio, Torino, Pisa, bottom table teams. And that's also the reason they have 12 points. So they must still prove that they can beat like a very, very good team. And I can't say Fiorentina right now is in form. Obviously, they're sitting bottom of the table, but looking at Roma tied in first place with 12 points, obviously you'd be like, okay, Roma's probably going to win. But most of their wins recently have been 1-0s. So I can see Fiorentina here at home pulling something, and I can see an upset happening.
It'd be an interesting one. Do you think that a loss here for either of these teams puts the European journey at stake? I mean, we know that Fiorentina's journey to make it into Europe is at stake. For Roma, if they lose to Fiorentina, the real question is, has Roma found its identity and they're going to play this kind of garbage football for the season? Or is a loss against Fiorentina, one, going to set back their their hopes of making Champions League? Or is it just going to expose the cracks within this Roma team?
I think the question you need to ask about Roma is, are they actually even like Gasperini? Personnel-wise, I don't think Gasperini has everybody that he wants. But you got to make do with what you have. And I think that with this fixture I think it's going to be a tipping point for either way for these coaches, because if Gasperini can't beat a struggling Fiorentina with what he has, then you got to look at him and say, okay, what happens when you do come up against Milan and Inter and Juventus and Napoli? What happens when we get further on in Europe, if we get there in the first place, and we're facing these bigger teams? What's going to happen then? Is Gasperini the man to go through a hardship and make the team good? Or Fiorentina way, if they go winless in 6 games, is Pioli's style of football going to be able to be a relegation team style of football? Because when you're a relegation team, you need to be a little bit more defensively solid. Or is it going to be a fact where if he wins this game, maybe he's getting a bit of his identity into the team, and the team is starting to pick up momentum and push for Europe and maybe get a top 7 finish in Serie A? I don't know, this match I think it's going to be like a very dogged game. But then again, I mean, Roma's top of the log. You're expecting so much just based off of position. But like Tom said, they haven't taken on a big dog yet.
I think I'm just going to ask a quick fire question on both of them. Roma, Fiorentina, who's taking it, Tom? Can you give me a score?
1-0 Fiorentina.
George?
I think like a 3-2 to Roma, like a last minute goal top.
I think 0-0. I don't think anyone's going to score.
3-2 is hectic.
That is one. We all know that Gasperini does not like Atom Dovbyk. Does not like the guy. Why is he taking the penalties then? And definitely after taking those 2 penalties, I can guarantee you now, and if people don't know this, you will hear it here first. Dovbyk will not start another game for Roma after that. Watch. January comes, he's gone. He's gone. He will be at Milan in January. We'll replace Jimenez, but I don't think that Dovbyk will remain at Roma. I want to move on to the next game, Napoli versus Genoa. You know that Napoli, there's not really much to expect from this fixture besides the fact that Genoa is going to sit with all 11 men in the box. They're not going to try to win the game because they know they're not going to win the game. It will be a surprise if they do win this game. But what I do want to touch on, I mean, we can all give pretty much quick score predictions. We saw that it was a statement win in the Champions League after losing to Milan. Napoli didn't just beat Sporting, they outdid their midfield. I mean, we saw the goal where Kevin De Bruyne takes on like 5 midfielders, ends up giving a beautiful through ball to Rasmus Højlund and scores. So obviously we know that Napoli is probably going to win this game. I mean, Tom, your score prediction, you said?
I said 5-0.
5-0 to Napoli against Genoa. You, George?
Yeah, listen, I would say like 3-4-0. Genoa's not. They'd be surprised if they reach Napoli's box. They're just gonna park the bus and try and play counter football the whole game.
And that's just the truth. And once Napoli scores the first goal, Genoa will push, they'll be exposed, and Napoli will probably score a lot more goals. I'm also going with the 3-0 win here with Napoli. But something I want to highlight in this Napoli team, and I'm going to leave it to both of you to have a very big opinion on this. Rasmus Højlund comes to Italy. He scores almost immediately. He goes and plays in the Champions League, pulls down the badge, shows the Champions League badge, pulls down the Napoli badge, touches the Napoli badge, and he's just scored a goal from pretty much when he was in England, his biggest arch rival in Kevin De Bruyne at City. Now they play together. This guy's scoring goals. At United, this guy couldn't even kick a ball straight. And now in Italy, he's getting everything right. Why? What is the reason?
Okay, Rasmus Højlund, yeah. First of all, like, he's playing alright, but let me touch on the game they played against Milan last week. He was nowhere to be found. I didn't see him do one thing that game. And then against Sporting now, yes, he got 2 goals, 2 assists from Kevin De Bruyne. Some can say, he's got De Bruyne and McTominay feeding him, but he does play well some games, just not every game. for me, it's not good enough because, especially against Milan, I didn't see him do anything. So he's playing alright. I wouldn't say he's playing amazing, but he's definitely playing better than he was at Manchester United. I think against like big teams, he's usually nowhere to be found.
Do you think it was just the Manchester United problem then, George?
I've said this time and time again. Ever since Ferguson left, United are Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Those Oaks are. There's a reason why every single player that has left United, whether it's been a loan or whether it's been a transfer, there's a reason why they perform and they actually do something outside of United. Because we're looking at Scott McTominay, who was in the conversation for a Ballon d'Or. He was in the top 30 players. You've got Erasmus Højlund, who's scoring 2 goals in the Champions League. Yes, you go from playing with flippin' Bruno Fernandes, whose teeth are always offsides, to playing with Kevin De Bruyne. It's chalk and cheese. But then you look at Marcus Rashford. He does well at Villa. He does well at Barcelona. You look at who else has left. Anthony. He does nothing but spin around in circles at United. He goes to Real Betis. He's a half-decent player. Garnacho doesn't train for months, goes to Chelsea. He got his first assist in the week. Yes, it was an own goal, but it was given down as an assist to him by UEFA. And there's many more. There's many more United players that why, when they're at United, they look like trash. They look like they have 2 left feet and they've never played football. And then they leave the club, and all of a sudden these guys are half-decent footballers, scoring goals, getting assists, and competing in Champions League when United finished 16th in a season. I think it's got to do with the system at United, the coaching, but kudos to Højlund to come in and to make an impact. Under Conte, he seems to do well with ex-United players, with McTominay as well. But I do think, like Tom said, he's a bit of a no-show sometimes. Like, he can play a game and literally do nothing. He can touch the ball twice and be a no-show. But I do also think the difference is the people around him. You do have a De Bruyne, you have a Lobotka, you have David Neres coming on the outside. You have some serious opportunities to put the ball in the back of the net compared to United, where you got Harry Maguire shouting at you. I wouldn't want to play football if I had that like screaming at me.
Do you know what the biggest thing is actually? Why all these United players are doing well in other clubs? For me, because I play football myself, I have a lot in the past as well. It's a confidence thing. I've never seen a team with so much pressure than United is having. Because you can see the players at United, they're not playing with confidence, they're playing with fear. So I don't want to talk too much about United because what they are doing. Just going back to Rasmus Højlund, you can see the difference in style. Yes, he doesn't show up every match, but you can see at Napoli, he plays with confidence, he shoots with confidence. At United, you could see when he has the ball, he's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, because you got the freak show Bruno Fernandes behind you and you got the fridge at the back. I would also be scared if I was playing at United.
Exactly.
I just think there's also, besides the confidence thing, and I believe I can even make a whole separate episode on this. There's so much more to playing in Italy than what there is to playing in England, and it comes down to a culture thing. In Italy, playing Serie A football is not just about how many sponsors you can get. Panini is the biggest sponsor of Serie A this year. Player of the Match Award, Panini. So it's just different. Serie A is more than just football. It's fashion, it's culture, it's heritage, it's food. It's everything that makes an Italian an Italian. Politics and drama and people that don't want to put money into the clubs and fans that hate their ownerships. It's the first game. The game against Napoli was the first game that Milan had their Curva Sud back since the end of last season. So we've played every game in the stadium without the Curva there. And, we're talking about stories where obviously I don't exactly want to mention them, but political stories that happen within clubs and within fan groups that are not exactly nice stories, but that's what makes this league so beautiful, is all these, as they say in Italian, polemics.
Well, there's a reason why when you research the most emotional and the biggest fans of football, and I see a lot of these TikToks where like Americans are reacting to soccer their form of football, their soccer fans compared to real football. And there's no English teams there that show their fans. There might be English teams for their chance because they like to take the piss out of things. But when you show like the ultras, the passion, the heart of football, it's the Italians. The Milan fans, the Inter fans, the Juventus fans. These guys literally die for their clubs. You go to an Italian guy that's 80 years old, he supported the same club from when he was 5. And he's lived that club and he's bled for that club, and that club was his first love. Everything's a business now. Everything is commercialized and it's all about money. But sometimes you just gotta play football and watch football for the love of football.
Yeah, spot on. Just want to go on to a point on that, and it's a very historic point. So most people don't know, but there is actually a name to Juve versus Milan, which is a game this weekend, and it's actually called the Derby dei Campioni. Why is this is it a name? It's not really mentioned often because obviously that title between the clubs can change. These are the two most historic clubs with the most titles shared between them in the whole of Italy, Juve and Milan. So they're playing this weekend, and like you said, the history behind the clubs. Juve is known as the old lady, has won the most scudetti in the whole of Serie A, and wherever you go in Italy, you will find a Juve fan. And the same thing for wherever you go in Italy, you will find a Milan fan, as you will find an Inter fan and a Roma fan. But it's the history of these clubs that get these people on to their fan bases that support them for a lifetime. So I want to just go into something about this match. We saw Napoli pretty much get used as a mop when they played against Milan, and Milan just washed the floor with them. They put them all over the floor. It was an interesting game, but I saw Napoli that couldn't break down a 10-man Milan for 40 minutes. And for that, I'm going to give Napoli a 0 out of 10 for their performance. I thought it was terrible. Allegri's return to Milan is something that I just thought was incredible.
It's romantic. It's a cinematic thing.
Romantic. It's incredible. I mean, I didn't think he would have had this kind of impact. So my question is Milan definitely going to make Champions League this season? Should they continue like this? I had said last week that I think we might even just run away with the Scudetto this season. George, what do you think? You're a Milan fan, bro. Share your thoughts. I finally have someone else that can share my opinion.
There's no bias here at all. Now, I've supported Milan. As soon as I looked into Italian football, Milan was the team that I chose, and I've loved them ever since. But I think Allegri and Milan are a match made in heaven. From his first stint, fantastic, to the second stint now, to see what he's done. It's not even necessarily like it's something that's a miracle. He's just done the right things at the right time. He's brought in experience. I mean, to bring in Modric, to have Rabiot in your midfield with a Fofana, to be able to get the best out of LeBron James of soccer. You got Christian Pulisic playing like a machine. To have a defense like that can literally hold out a Napoli team for almost half a game. To have a team that has the fight back, they looks like they have a spirit in the team. They have like a brotherhood, a camaraderie, this ride or die type of feeling in the team. I do think that Milan, I think they guaranteed a Champions League spot if they continue like this. And I'm not putting it past them to win the league, to have an experienced coach, to have experienced players in the team now. To have depth in the team now. I think it's Milan's league to lose at this point. With the way other teams are performing, with manager chaos, I think that Milan have such a good structure and such a good backing right now, and a good feeling around the club. Yes, there is bias in that, and people can disagree with it, but I do think that Milan are actually like just a solid footballing entity right now.
I like that. Tom, I'm going to ask you a question. You watched the Napoli versus Milan game with me, and I could see you were in awe by the way Milan was playing. How big is the impact of Modric and Rabiot in that midfield, bro? And what damage are they going to do to Juve?
I mean, yeah, we watched that match together, and I knew Modric and Rabiot were like class players, but locking down Scott McTominay and De Bruyne and that whole Napoli midfield, the way they did it was crazy. And if they play like this against every single team, Milan has to win it. If they play every team from now on like they played against Napoli, I can see Milan winning it, because to lock up a team like Napoli, even with 10 men, like you said, last 40 minutes, they were nowhere. That's not against Parma or Torino. That's Napoli. So I was very, very impressed by Rabiot and by Modric. Of course, Modric with his experience really came in clutch. He would sit back as a centre back and then move forward. Rabiot and his defense that game as well was crazy.
Let's not forget about Fofana. That man is a beast.
Yeah, he was also good, but Rabiot and as well, like that CDM, so clutch.
I don't think right now in Italy there's a midfield that can like outplay those guys. That midfield just seems to every piece of the puzzle fits perfectly. Just the way they move the ball, their positioning, it's magic. It's football. There's no other way to say it. These are just quality players.
I don't see Milan like wiping the floor with Juve, because end of the day, Juve haven't lost in ages. They're still undefeated in Serie A. They're undefeated in Europe as well.
Yeah, but a lot of draws. A lot of draws there.
But they want to show a lot of heart, so it's not going to be like Milan wiping the floor with Juve. I still think it's going to be a very close match, but Milan is edging it for me.
I don't know, bro. I don't know if I'm fully agreeing with that statement, because and it's just the way that I feel about it. Juventini still feel that they got a chance. Guys, Federico Gatti, yes, scored the goal of the season. All right, the Puskas Award is done. It's decided.
The keeper helped him a little bit there.
Sure, but look, a bar still in the box is no easy thing to do. But the one thing I will say to you is, yes, Conceição also scored a brilliant goal. Phenomenal player as well. Again, a phenomenal player. Someone who, for me, could be better than Kenan Yildiz. I'll say it for how it is. He's a good player, phenomenal player. But this is where I really have a serious question or concern. Juve's midfield is still a problem. And, you've got a team where you've got no midfield versus a team that's literally against the game of Napoli just show that they are a phenomenal side. At Villarreal, Juve threw the match away against Villarreal. It was such a poor match, in my opinion. You threw it away. You had Renato Vega, an ex-Juventino, who was deemed not good enough to play at Juve, score a goal to draw against you. A season later, after you sold it, guys, come on. Are you that bad? You're selling a player because you say he's not good enough. You're going on to better things. But you can't defend Renato Vega. Dai, ragazzi, it's a joke. It is a joke. So I don't know. I'm just being honest here. I'm of the opinion that the way that this game goes will really determine the legitimacy of this Juve's team. Juve hasn't really faced a big team. Yes, they faced Inter, but remember, Inter's also under a new coach. Tudor had a position at Juve longer than what Chivu's had it. And by saying that, Chivu has not had the time to implement his ideas fully. Yes, he had the Club World Cup, but Tudor has had a much longer time. He replaced Thiago Motta. Now, what am I trying to say about all of this? Is that I don't think, again, that Tudor is the right guy, let alone do I think that the way that Juve is going about their market strategy, that it's correct. I don't think it's correct. I think that they should sign some experience. It's just weird. Juve has been a team that has always had amazing, if not world-class experienced players in the team.
They had Marchisio, they had Chiellini, they had Bonucci, they had Alexandro, they had Buffon in goals, they had Pogba there. Those guys were insane.
In the defense, you want to bring in a young defender, you could bring in a young defender. Who will you bring in a young defender with? Well, you would replace your young defender with someone else in the back because you knew that you had Chiellini and Buffon. And you had Chiellini, Buffon, and Bonucci. And if you wanted to put someone else, like Patrice ever arrived at Juve, he said it was training at United was nothing compared to being at Juve. Juve was tough, it was difficult. And he was playing alongside players like Chiellini and Bonucci. So someone is arriving, quite young, no real experience, played in a good United team. It was a good United team, went to a very dominant Juve team that won literally everything except Champions League in their dominant 9-year run. Okay. go up and learn how to play football with some of the most experienced players ever. Like you said, but Marquisio was there when Pogba arrived. You also had Pirlo there at Juve when Pogba arrived. Pogba became one of the best midfielders all. Well, no wonder. Look what he had around him. The Juve was stacked. Higuain went to Juve, serviced like a champ, scored many, many goals, phenomenal player. Juve's always had great players. And this Juve team is just a bunch of good players. Young, very exciting talents, but no great player. And it's costing them a lot in their league. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I believe that this is a legitimacy test for if Tudor is the right man for the job. I don't think so. I don't think this is going to work. I don't even think that Juve at this race is going to make champs.
I agree with you. And this Juve team has been looking a bit suspect. To go and you get Jonathan David, who is in France was a good striker, and he's struggling in front of goals. Vlahovic had a decent start, but your Juventus team is, like you said, there's good players, but I don't see the world-class factor in the side. I don't see the wow factor that's going to change the game. You do have some youngsters that can, you've got Conceição, you've got Yildiz, you've got Cambiaso who can make an impact. But I don't see, in terms of their defense, I don't see somebody that's going to be able to, maybe he can stop Pulisic, but then to have Rafael Leao running at you and Jimenez running at you, to be able to stop all of them is a different case. I mean, that midfield has no chance against Modric and Rabiot. Juve's midfield is, you got Weston McKennie. Like, what the hell? What does he do? Where they can upset Milan is because it is a home game that they will have their fans backing them, and they do have a decent attack, especially if they do start Conceição, then they got a pretty decent player outside. And Estupiñán being suspended, maybe the left side of Milan is somewhere they can target. But just in terms of from what I see on the team sheet and what I see in these last couple of weeks, I don't think people will start judging Tudor a bit too soon, but this is going to be, I think, a very important game for his tenure at Juventus, because if he can beat the Milan, then you can see that the team is solid, they're in the right positions, he's got a good tactic going. If they get just beaten by Milan, then he can say, oh, well, we played one of the best teams in Italy right now. It's an excuse. If they get absolutely demolished by Milan, then Juventus fans are going to be calling for his head. I think there's so many doors and so many possibilities this thing could...
The outcome of this match, do you think it will determine or set the tone for the rest of the season for Juve? If so, what is the right strategy for Juve at this point? Does this set the tone? And if they lose, should they just cut their losses and go to another coach?
I think it definitely will. I mean, you guys already spoke about the midfield, and Milan's midfield is a lot better at the moment than Juve. So I think what Juve need to do is they need to make a change. I think after the Milan match, they'll definitely see that they need to make a change. Bring in someone more experienced, or switch it up, because I think Juve has been just scraping some draws and some wins, and it's definitely not the Juve that we saw all those years ago with Pirlo and Pogba and all those guys, but it will definitely be a huge factor. And if they continue to play like this, I know right now they're up there, but I can see them finishing maybe top 8, maybe.
Yeah. I want to mention something, and I'm going to take another dig at United here. United fans who are listening to this podcast and have a feeling that Zidane is going to become the coach of United if Amorim decides to resign. Zidane will not go to United because he has no history with that club. You guys forget that Zidane, his stint at Juve was nothing great. There's history to be made there to try fix. He will go back to Juve if Juve get rid of Tudor. I can guarantee you now he will never go back to Madrid after what he did, because he goes down as one of the best coaches ever. And why on earth would he put his reputation at risk by going to United? Just think about that a little bit so you can stop your little memes. He'll come back to Italy. The weather's nicer, the food's better. That's where he'll definitely go, and he'll probably go to Juve. It's a really good team. As much as I don't like them, I still think I'd choose Juve over United any day. And that's just a simple thing of because it's Italian. My last question to both of you. Does Milan have enough firepower in this squad, or do they need to make one or two more signings in the team to make a full push for the Scudetto? What piece of this team do you guys feel is missing still?
Honestly, for me, just a clinical striker. I mean, we saw against Napoli, both goals were more or less because of Pulisic. And then when he was subbed out, there wasn't really much up front. Jimenez wasn't really doing too much. So for me, just that clinical striker, like a Vlahovic, you know. So if I was at Milan, I'd probably get a striker and maybe a defender, like a centre back. That's what
You, George?
Yeah, I agree with Tom there. I think they definitely need a number 9. They need a presence to put the ball in the back of the net because Pulisic is a winger. You can't rely on him all the time. But then again, they do have Christopher Nkunku on the bench now. I would get a young midfielder just to play under Modric and Rabiot, so that in a few years' time you got a midfielder that's learned from the best, and then probably a central defender, someone with experience, just to play a game here and there, shore up the defense, create some depth.
I see where you're coming from. I know that we have Ricci, but another young midfielder will definitely do well for the Cards, especially because Ricci is a direct replacement for whoever's currently there. But then, if he comes out, who else are you putting in? We do still lack one or two signings in the midfield. I must agree with you there. I just want your score predictions, guys. George?
3-0 Milan. Yeah. You can't say 10-0, okay?
I always say 1-0 is meaning that it was a tight match and you've just managed to score the one goal and you won it because you were slightly the better team. 2-0 is you got the job done, and 3-0 is a harding in Italy. I do think that Milan is going to give Juve a harding. But I don't see Yildiz not scoring this match or Conceição not scoring this match. I'm going to go with the 4-2. I do think that we will leak 2 goals, but I still think it will be such a harding 4-2. I think that those 2 goals would be consolation goals right at the end of the match, where it would be like, oh, okay, they've scored 2 goals, they've taken their foot off the gas. I just want to say thank you guys for joining the pod.
No, thank you guys, man.
For joining the podcast. We'll see you definitely again in the future. I hope you enjoyed that, and I look forward to watching the game with you guys this weekend. And Tom, I have another last question for you, bro. What can you tell people who are viewing this video to do?
Dislike and unsubscribe.
Unsubscribe.
Yeah.